Welcome. I'm your host, Steve Davis, and this is another edition of The Roundtable, brought to you by Jefferson College and JCTV. We've all experienced the uncertainties of hospitals, medical care, doctors. With me this afternoon is a woman who has gone a step further. After her own personal experiences, she's investigated and she's discovered what it's like to face the medical world and how to react to them as an individual and as a patient. With me is Nancy Doering, the author of Reality Check. Nancy, welcome to the program, and thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
This is a subject matter, medical care, doctors, that everyone has experienced at some point in their life, whether not personally, with a family member. Start with, give us your background. What drove you to write this book?
Okay, well, essentially, necessity being the mother of invention. I unexpectedly, at the age of 45, had the onset of quite a few life-threatening and then ultimately chronic illness type things in my own life. And I'm an educated person. I'm a teacher and work with education all the time, and thought I was pretty prepared for that. And I found that when you walk into the hospital, you're totally in a different world. And because of the experiences that I had in my own medical illnesses and then with some family members as well, I decided that rather than to whine and cry about it, that it was time that a patient wrote a book. When you go to Barnes & Noble, you see lots of books by doctors, you see lots of books by nurses, but there's not too much by a patient. So I decided to keep notes as I was going through the different steps of getting me back to wellness as well as I can be, and wrote the book to help others learn to advocate for themselves.
Okay. Well, your book is titled Reality Check, Demystifying the Doctor-Patient Relationship. So let's start with the general understanding is the average person and their doctor. This is my doctor. It's a good doctor. Takes care of me, and that's about as far as I really know about my doctor.
Exactly.
So what should I be knowing? What should I be doing in that area?
Well, one of the things I talk about in the book is that a lot of times we spend more time picking out a new pair of shoes than we do picking out the person that's going to make decisions about our health and possibly our life. So I think that we need to start thinking more of the doctor as a partner, and that is someone that has a whole lot of education in a field that we need. And to boil it down to being simple, you start first with your general care physician. That might be a family practitioner. If you're an adult, it's probably an internal medicine physician. But whoever that is, they're kind of the captain of your ship. So you need to be very careful in selecting the doctor that's going to be in charge of your entire well-being.
So what do you say to someone, say, like me, who is never sick and I'm never in trouble and I don't have a primary care physician?
I tell you that's great, but don't meet your primary care physician in the emergency room, because then you don't know who you're going to see. And in fact, if you have a primary care, then you already have chosen your hospitals. And unless it's a really dire emergency where they've got to get you to the nearest facility, then you're going to go into the facility that you've investigated, that you want your care to be taken care of there, and your doctor is on staff there. So that doctor is really important to select. Like, you've moved and you're very busy, you're unpacking your house, you've got kids that get enrolled in school, you've got all of these other things going on. And the last thing you want to do is say, okay, now I've got to find a new doctor.
How would you suggest to an individual? Let's take a person who's new to the community, and they're actually in touch with their responsibilities as a family unit. How would you tell them go about to find a family practitioner, someone to take care of them?
Okay, in this day and age, it's a lot easier than it used to be to get more information. For one thing, you have computers and you can go to the library. Most hospitals have a website that has all of their physicians that are on staff listed with a little bit of information about them. So that's a good place to start. And then the old-fashioned way of asking people that you work with, people you go to church with, other family members that are in the area, who's your doctor? And do you like them, and why do you like them? So I think you should be very careful to ask people you trust. Now, you may go to a doctor that they really like and you don't like their personality. And that's going to happen too. You might have to go to a couple of doctors before you find the right fit. Because at the very least, you want your doctor to be qualified. You want to make sure they're qualified in the area that you need them. You want to make sure they went to a decent school and have some years under their belt. Now, you know, even if they're a brand new doctor, they've been through a residency program.
I got a question. I always, the old joke about is, you know, what do you call a person who graduates last in medical school? Doctor.
Doctor, exactly.
You know, what school do they go to? Now, as an attorney, of course, I went to, fortunate enough, I went to St. Louis University Law School, which I think was a very, very good law school. But I'm not certain, as many years as I've been practicing, that I could tell anyone what is or is not a good school. Is Harvard Medical School that much better than St. Louis University Medical School? That much better than Cleveland's medical school? Is there something you could give to an individual, or is medical, you got a degree and you haven't lost your license and there's been no malpractice complaints, is there much more than that we need to know?
I think there is. Well, I think it kind of depends. If you're looking at a very young doctor, I think looking at, you know, just like a very young teacher, looking at where they went to school, because that's the depth of their education right now. But as Stephen Sanders is my doctor, and he was a partner in this book, says at seminars that we give that a lot of times the question will come to him, what was your rank in class? Or what school did you go to, and those kinds of things. And I think it is, to a certain degree, important. It tells you some things about them. But after you've practiced for a number of years, and as you say, there are other ways to measure a doctor. Are they respected in the community? How many people do you know that go to them? And those kinds of things become more and more important. When you're new, you might say, well, I really need to know they went to what I would think was a good medical school.
Okay. I always laugh at that you know, class rank. I remember my first year, after my first year law school, and I interviewed for the job, and one of the first questions that the partner asked me was, you know, what were my grades, what was my rank? And I just looked at him and said, don't know, didn't check, but they invited me back.
Right.
You know, that's, you know, I wasn't concerned.
Exactly.
Of course, I was fortunate enough, I had a government position waiting for me, so I wasn't worried about the pressure. But that's a primary physician. Is there something different that we should be looking for in a doctor if we're looking at a specialty or a certain area, or even in emergency care?
Oh, absolutely. Your primary care, when you think about it, we all think about Marcus Welby, those of us that are old enough. Some of the people I've talked to don't know.
I know Marcus
But you can
Welby.
go online and they can tell you about Marcus Welby. But your primary care, you really need a good fit, not only in whether you think they're qualified, but also that you can talk to them easily, because they're going to oversee your general health. But specialists, it gets a little bit different. You do want them qualified in their area. And you also want to make sure that you can talk to them. But because you may or may not see them again, you're not as worried about the personality fit so much as you are with your primary care. What I have found to be true in all of my different things is finding the primary care helps you find the specialist, because they network. And if you like your primary care and you respect them and you like the hospital where they work, they have a whole bunch of people they can recommend you to, depending on what illness you're dealing with. So that helps.
And you mentioned in your book, there's a section on it about, you know, talking with doctors and I guess the newer doctor, early stage, versus the doctor who's been out in practice for 20 years. If you get more than a hello, how are you from your doctor, there's not much time. I know as a lawyer, if I spent as little time with my clients as the doctors spend with their patients, I'm thinking I'd have more, you know, malpractice claims against me from legal. Doctors don't spend much time with their patients, though.
They don't. And part of that is because it's the nature of the beast now. With insurance costs being what they are, the insurance companies are requiring that they see more and more people. A lot of internal medicine physicians do not see you in the hospital anymore. You see what's called a hospitalist, and they specialize in hospital care. And a lot of physicians would like to come and see you, but the time restraint is there. So that's kind of where the technical part of my book comes in. I have some forms in here where you can make the most of your visit with the doctor. You're going to get, if you're lucky, about 12 minutes with the actual doctor. You'll probably be there 20 or 30, but you'll talk to nurses or nurse practitioners. They'll take your history. Has anything changed? And so what I say, we can, you know, so much is out of our control. What I put in here are the things that we can control. And one of the things that you can do is make sure you have an updated list of all your medications, all your illnesses, all the other doctors you go to. It doesn't take that long, but it saves them from having to walk around questions to ask you what kind of medications you're on from other physicians. They don't, if I go to my internal medicine physician, he hasn't prescribed everything I take. So he has on record what he's given me, but he needs to know everything. And so I take a list of all my past illnesses, all of the things that I'm currently dealing with, a list of my questions, and I have never ever had a doctor not say, if all of my patients did this, we would spend all of our time together taking care of you.
You know, again, jumping around just different topics, something you mentioned here, you know, relationship with your doctor, senior doctor, but you mentioned nurse practitioner. Often we've called our pediatrician, said, my son's not feeling well, can we get him in? And their answer is, well, the doctor's booked, but we have an availability with the nurse practitioner. And I'm always wondering, and I love nurse practitioners, I'm a big advocate of nurse practitioners, I don't know where you stand on that issue, but I'm thinking, do I need a doctor if I can have a nurse practitioner, or am I getting second-rate care by seeing a nurse practitioner? Because more and more offices are using them.
That's kind of a new position, and I am for nurse practitioners when they're used the way that they should be. And the way that they should be, a nurse practitioner cannot practice on their own.
Right.
They have to practice under a doctor's supervision. And a nurse practitioner is someone who has a master's degree in nursing, and then they choose an area, like your pediatrician has chosen pediatrics. And they go to extensive training, additional training, to work with the doctor in a pediatric setting. And what they do is they unlike a nurse, they can write prescriptions as long as they're not narcotics, and they can give shots. Of course, nurses can do that too. And they can sit and talk to you and figure out what's going on. When they're used properly and not overused, the nurse practitioner is a wonderful asset. They do have more time to talk to you, and they often are working with you on the aftercare after the initial diagnosis and that type of thing to help you prevent that from happening again or to get better faster. So I think they're great, and they can see you more readily than the doctor. But what I do like about the nurse practitioners in my doctor's offices, all of them, and I think almost all of my doctors have them, is they will always say to me, you know, I'm not sure about that, let me go check with the doctor. So if you're hearing that, it's a good thing. And if it's something simple like an ear infection or something like with your child, you want them treated as quickly as possible. So that's what you get back in return from seeing the nurse. If it's real serious, you have to insist, I want the doctor to see my child.
Okay. Well, with that, we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, I want to talk about the areas we've had an opportunity to look for our doctor, check out our doctor, but now it's an emergency, and that opens up a whole new world of what am I getting myself into. So when we come back from a quick break, we'll talk about emergency rooms and hospitals.
Our greatest strength is our people.
The people. We've got a top-notch faculty who are dedicated to the success of their students and go above and beyond the call of duty to help them in any way that they can. We have staff who are also dedicated to make sure that the students' progress through our college is a smooth transition. We also have a student body who's very diverse, that we've got them from all walks of life, they're all ages, they're coming from all over the world, whether it's Arnold or Sri Lanka.
People ask me all the time, why would I choose Jefferson? And bottom line, why you should choose Jefferson is the quality. You can receive the quality of education here without going somewhere else, without paying higher prices. You can have the focus on your success here at Jefferson College. Why wouldn't you choose Jefferson College?
Jefferson College would be an excellent choice because they're going to get a quality education at an affordable price, and they're going to get the personal attention of a faculty and staff who are dedicated to their success.
Well, we're back, and we're back with Nancy Doering, the author of Reality Check, Demystifying the Doctor-Patient Relationship. We all interact with doctors at some point in our lives, more often than not, some people. But I want to look into and examine, and you've already been there, when you don't have an opportunity to come prepared maybe, or you don't have a chance to investigate or research who your treatment is, your treating physician is going to be, when it's that 911 call or that emergency room visit, what can you expect from a patient's perspective on those scenarios?
This was one of the most fascinating parts of my book because I happened to have in my classroom a student whose dad was an emergency room physician at the largest hospital in St. Louis. And I just asked him if I could shadow him and see what he did.
We can give names. That would be
Oh, can I give names? At Barnes.
Barnes?
Yeah, at Barnes. And my other doctors are at St. John's. And he's a fascinating person. And I said, you know, I've been in the emergency room a lot of times, and I probably complain about the same things that other people complain about. It takes so long, and why does it take so long, and I'm in pain, or my child's in pain, and why does all of this happen? Do you think you can enlighten me? And of course, everybody in my family was laughing because they called me Nancy Nurse as a child because there was a Nancy Nurse doll, and it was a joke because I was the squeamish one with blood and everything. And so he said, no, you can come in. I've gotten it approved, and you can shadow me. So I went late at night at Barnes, and if you know anything about Barnes, there's a lot of gunshot wounds and really bloody things that come in at Barnes at night.
Yeah, I've had the fortunate to visit Barnes on a Saturday evening. Yes.
Yeah, so it's pretty busy. But I did go, and it was a fascinating night, and I actually did get over the blood and all of that stuff and not get too upset about it. But what I did find out from what he walked me through, a normal, if you could call it normal day for him, in the evening, was that even though it appears to be very chaotic and it appears that nothing is happening, there is a very set of rules, quite rigid set of rules that they have in place for when people come in to make sure that everyone gets the care they need when they need it. And it's not like going and getting a number at Subway and you get to go next. It's definitely decided by, is this patient going to die right now? And that is, then it goes down from there. So in a way, if you have to wait a while in the emergency room, it's probably kind of good because they've taken some vital signs and you're not as sick as you think
That's
you are.
why I tell a lot of my clients, I say, I've got good news and bad news for you. The bad news is your lawsuit's not worth much money. The good news is that's because you're not injured.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those were the things that I did learn from that, and I go into quite a bit of detail about it in the book. Now, with that being said, I think the most important thing about an emergency type thing, if at all possible, now if you're out of town and you're in an accident with your husband, hopefully you have that list of medications and things somewhere close in your wallet or in your purse, or so that they know right away, because they do look for those. I mean, they brought a little girl in that was unconscious. Her friends had dropped her off. Unfortunately, it involved drugs, and she was just dumped off at the emergency room. And the first thing they did was look through her purse, looking to find out information about her. So if you carry those things, it's going to be helpful.
That is, my wife actually invented, although we never could get it patented, but for car seats, we all forget about infants. And in our car seat with our son, because he was on all kinds of medications and on all kinds of medical problems at birth, we had that list of every medical problem, every medication he was on, every prescription he was taking. So if we were in an accident, it was right there, just like a luggage tag.
Exactly.
Right there with his car seat. So all
Absolutely.
we didn't do it for us,
Right.
but we did it for our son.
So we're going to ask you to take the next step further, and now your son's older and he's okay, but you still have the list.
So I figure when
and-
he's wheeling me around, he'll have the tag next to me on my
But
chair.
he wants to have you to wheel around, so you need to get that information together. You're an attorney, so you need to have it for you and your wife too. And even though we can't be prepared for the exact accident or the exact emergency, if you have that basic information, case in point, I take metformin. You think, oh, well, that's a very easy drug to take. It has to do with either being diabetic or, in my case, pre-diabetic, helps my insulin work. I didn't think of it being something important that they know. Well, I found out from this emergency room physician that I really should wear a bracelet, which I do, which I did break, and I have it fixed. But The reason they need to know about metformin is because oftentimes when you're in an accident, you have internal injuries, possibly, they do a CAT scan. They do a CAT scan that they say is called with contrast. So they take a scan of your abdomen, then they put this dye in your blood, and they look at it again to contrast it back and forth. What I did not know, that I do now know, is that you're on metformin. They don't do that kind of a CAT scan because it can make your liver shut down, or your kidneys, kidney failure. Sorry, it's kidneys. It has to be out of your system for 24 hours. So when you get a CAT scan, normally, if you're doing testing or something, they'll just say, don't take your metformin. But if I'm in an accident, they need to know that right away, because then I'm facing some kind of a permanent damage thing.
One of the problems that I have with emergency rooms, and not hospitals, but emergency rooms, is more and more, and the public is not aware, that the emergency rooms are contracted out in a lot of hospitals. So I'm going to the Barnes, or I'm going to SLU, or I'm going to St. John's, or whatever hospital. That hospital may actually not employ the doctors. It may be emergency, specialist of mid-Missouri. It's a corporation that staffs, and all the hospital's doing is providing space and equipment.
Right.
Where I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go to Barnes, and I don't want to pick on Barnes because they may staff their own. I don't know. Or I'm going to go hospital, X, and I'm thinking, well, that's a great hospital. They would have a great emergency room. Their doctors are the best. When it's not, and I'm finding more and more that almighty insurance company is dictating the level of care, stitch them and move them out and get the next one in that volume business.
Right.
Do you find when you were modern, I guess you're following the Barnes around, but did you find much from the doctor? Did you talk about maybe other hospitals or the pressure they're under to not care for the patients, but the financial side of the business?
The interesting thing that he told me, and because we hear about the finances all the time, we did have a chance to sit down and talk about that a little bit. And he said, what's interesting is you see all this equipment and all that. Now, I do know Barnes employs Washington University Hospital doctors. That have graduated from WashU, which is where he went. And so I do believe at this point they employ their own. However,
WashU physicians, yes.
Yeah, and St. John's usually it's SLU.
Oh, so I didn't
a
know
lot
that. I
of
knew SLU was SLU. I knew SLU was SLU, but I didn't know about St. John's.
A lot of St. Louis University physicians, a lot of them do their residency through St. John's. So they have a lot of doctors there from St. John's. As far as the emergency room doctors, I'm not sure. But they are both teaching hospitals, which is helpful, because then they have lots of extra people there, oftentimes. The
Which
residents
also is nerve-wracking
assist.
when you're the patient who they're examining. When you're laying there and they're all walking around, and it never fails. There'll be 5 students there, and 4 of them are the brightest, and the 5th is the one who says the comment that gets you scared to death.
Exactly. But do you know, as a patient, you have the right to say, I want them to leave.
Yes.
And sometimes we forget about that. That's the other thing, that we don't speak up. And it doesn't mean that you have to shout and be the mean, nasty patient in room 4, but we have to learn that it's our body, and we are the ones that are going to suffer the most if everything isn't done right. So we have to inform them what we need them to know, but we also have to, I always have someone with me at the hospital, if at all possible. And I don't mean just in the emergency room. I mean when I'm there and I'm not lucid, somebody in my family is there, either my husband, my daughter, my mother, someone.
Well, that's just because you're in the back room waiting for hours and hours on round 2, and you want someone to keep you company.
Well, that's not just that either, because there are questions that you need to ask. And if you're in pain or you're bleeding or you don't know what's wrong with you, they're lucid, and they can speed things up a little bit and at least walk. You can't get anywhere. You're sitting in a bed. They can walk down to the counter and say, when's the doctor going to see my wife? And they are probably caring for someone that's more sick than you, but you might have been forgotten. And so you do need to have an advocate there for you. Hospitals also have advocates. They don't advertise that too much, but they have someone that represents you, and you can ask for them to come if you don't think you're getting the care that you should. You say, I want the advocate in here, and I want him in here now.
And I sort of distracted you. We were talking about the finances and the doctor, and we went to another tangent.
I'm sorry.
And I remember that one, so the Alzheimer's isn't fully kicked in yet. I remember we were talking about doctors and money.
And what he told me, which was very surprising to me, when you think of Barnes and how big it is and all the people that come in and out, that they normally run in the red from their emergency room. Because a lot of people, unfortunately, use the emergency rooms for clinic care. They don't have insurance, they don't have enough money, they know they have to see you, and that clogs the system. And then they don't pay sometimes. So we need to get clinics that are free set up to clear that out.
I've often thought of that same concept. And St. Anthony's is what brings me to mind, where they have their urgent cares. I'm always thinking they should put an urgent care attached to the emergency room, so that maybe at the beginning on the triage, the person can sit there and say, we're going to lose money on this. Let's lose money
Over
next
there.
door, where it's
Exactly.
not as expensive. Or if I got to walk in, I know I can walk in into the urgent
Anyway.
care and not the emergency room. I always wondered why hospitals didn't do something like that.
I think it would be a smart hospital that would do that, that would put them adjacent, because, you know, I'm not making a judgment of someone that your kid is sick and you're out of work or whatever. There's a lot more of that now than in the past. I've got to get my kid taken care of until you take them where they're going to get taken care of.
But even
That's
if
for
your
sure.
child needs to be taken care of, and I have insurance and we can pay, some of the minor routine, it's going to take 40 minutes to see my child.
Exactly.
I'm thinking, I just took up an emergency, especially it's after 5, my doctor's not there. 40 minutes they could be caring for maybe someone more suitable for the
Sure,
situation.
even
I
though
guess
your
once-
child needs help.
And I'm thinking, urgent cares, I just wish, of course, here in Jefferson County, up in the north end, you know, we've got the one in Arnold, and you've got now St. Anthony's has a Fenton branch.
Right.
Jefferson Memorial's talking about putting one in Festus. So I guess this is the new concept of modern medicine.
I think it is, and I think it's a good trend. But I'm going to be a nag and say the best thing to do is get a general care physician so that you can call them at night, and then they can either direct you to the emergency room or the urgent care, or whether, you know, they think that it can wait until morning. If you don't have a doctor, you're in a really bad spot.
And that is, it seems though the modern trend is to keep you away from your doctor in the hospital. Now I can go to my Walgreens and get seen by, or Schnucks, or have a nurse practitioner / doctor in their little Medcare clinics. That seems to be the new trend. I guess the doc in the box is.
And that scares me a little bit. I guess maybe because I have a very complicated medical history, which I never thought I would have. But mine is so complicated that I don't really want to go to the Walgreens urgent care. I want to go to my doctor, because what might seem simple isn't necessarily as simple in someone with my different kinds of things. They might not catch your different medications. They probably will, but I guess I'm having a problem with that one.
Well, with me is Nancy Doering, again, the author of Reality Check, and a fascinating book of, really, when I read it, and I did read it here, is of common sense. It's things that you should be doing that we just don't think about. But one area that the book didn't deal with, because you're talking about relationships, is what about when you have the unpleasant experience with your doctor, or unpleasant experience with a hospital? What should a patient do at that point?
With the doctor, you should fire him and get a new one. And we don't think we can fire our doctors, but we can, and I have. I had a doctor tell me that when I asked about a medication possibility of things that could happen with it, that he would tell me about that when I needed to know, and I was already on the medication, and he wasn't my doctor anymore. So I think with the doctor that you should, you know, if you really feel that you've been treated unfairly, you should get a new doctor. With a hospital, you should write letters, because the administrators do. The one good thing about the money thing is they're competing for your business. You are a consumer now, and if you document what happened and you don't think that it was fair, you need to take the time, instead of just complaining, to write a letter to them. And you know, there are agencies also where the doctors are licensed that you need to make your feelings known. And you don't ever know if your letter is going to be the first one or the 1,000th one. And if it's the only one, then maybe it was just unfortunate. But if they start getting lots of letters, they might start looking at the practices at the hospital, and they do want you to get well. But they're, you know, we have humans everywhere, and we all make mistakes. So
Just my mind wanders again, and you mentioned kind of about, you asked your doctor about a prescription. I'm wondering, how do doctors, it seems to me that the pharmaceutical companies, through my TV set now with all these, I have a list of prescriptions and medications that I need to ask the doctor, do I have this disease, and should I be taking this medication? I mean, it just seems that the pharmaceutical companies are wanting to push their product through the well, doctor, I got this ear infection. Shouldn't I be taking? I'm wondering how many doctors just say, here's a prescription, shut up.
I don't think that mine would, and I think your doctor needs to be the last call on that because they know your specific body better than the pharmaceutical company does. What I find interesting about those commercials is often they don't tell you what it's for. They just advertise the name of the drug, and they don't even tell you what it's for. So you go into the doctor and say, what is this for? Do you think I should have to take it?
I thought they were all for sexual dysfunction.
Well, not all of them. Some of them they don't even tell you.
These TV sets we're going.
Yeah, so
Well,
I would still rely on my doctor. I guess I'm a real diehard on that one. That I think it's okay because they're looking at a lot of different medications. And so if you read about one that you think might help your particular condition, I would take it with me on my list and say, what do you think about this? Because they probably have already been told about it. And they might know something about you that might make it not a good one for you.
All right.
So.
Well, thank you. I'll get you any last minute wrap up or anything that we haven't you want to point out in your book here. I do want to point out, and we'll have it on it, how they can get in touch if anyone would like a copy of this book. It is a very quick and easy read. That's something I want. Sometimes it's not something like, oh my God, it's medical, it's complicated. No,
it's not medical because I'm a teacher. I teach 7-year-olds.
Well, and a 7-year-old could read and understand this book. Perfect example.
Oh well, I think you could understand a lot more than this. There are free forms though, so if you want to go on the website and purchase the book, it's very cheap. It's like $12 and some shipping. If you mention today that you were here in Jefferson County, I'll send you a couple bucks back with it.
Oh, there you go.
We want to get this Jefferson County going.
We'll do one better. So. Mention it today and we'll send the money to the college.
There you go.
All right, well, thank you. With again today was Nancy Doering and her book, Reality Check, Demystifying the Doctor-Patient Relationship. And with that, we want to thank you again for being here, Nancy, and it's been a pleasure.